I think what really makes sense is to establish this mindset of agility, of business focus, of ownership and responsibility of what people do, to create an environment in which they can really make a difference and they feel that. And to treat this as a starting point for the rest of the organization to learn. Dzień dobry. Good morning. I hope you don't mind that I'll continue this presentation in English. I typically talk about those ideas and experiences in English. It's just easier for me to find the right words, so I hope that's fine. Really glad to be here. Quite surprised about this introduction as well, but brings back good memories for sure. What I wanted to share today is a real-life experience about how to bring agility of a startup back to large enterprise. And actually, yesterday I was introducing a minor improvements to the slide deck, to the presentation. And one of my colleagues at ABB walked by my desk, saw the title, and said, you know, if this is the title of your speech tomorrow, then I guess it will be a short one. Just please don't try to fool all those smart people. Just say, not possible, and go home. It's not that obvious, though. I think there are many things that can enable individuals to achieve extraordinary things if the environment is right. Even if in such complex organizations as those international large companies. So I'm managing IT innovation globally for ABB. And for those of you, probably some of you know, some of you don't, ABB is one of the leaders in power and automation. So a company that designs and manufactures, I guess, most innovative industry products. Robots, smart engines for the huge cruise ships, or systems for controlling power plants. Now, if you think about the products, those are highly innovative. But if you think about the organization behind, it's very sad to say, it's a classical, super complex, huge enterprise. 130,000 people employed worldwide, over 100 working in over 100 countries. My entire professional career was around IT, around managing IT and around managing teams and projects. And what I want to share today is a real story about managing IT organizations, teams, or really enabling teams and enabling people. But I guess it's not only relevant to IT. You can, for most of those points, most of those findings, I guess, they work in any other situation, sector, in a large organization. So I hope you'll find it interesting. Now, before we go to how to improve things, I would like to focus also on what and why first, so we have a full picture of the situation. If we look at IT, IT is not anymore about the bits and bytes, keeping the lights on, having your SAP, ERP, corporate systems running. It's much more than that. This has changed dramatically throughout the last years. Nowadays, when the budgets for IT are stable, there's new demand that is being channeled through IT from the business side. There is digitalization, digital products, things like big data, Internet of Things, blockchain, mobile, you name it. All those things are strictly related to IT. And if we look at the actual budgets, which are stable or even there's a pressure to decrease them, and the increasing demand, nowadays there's already a gap between those two lines. And this gap will increase exponentially as we go. And I strongly believe that applying the classical ways of scaling those organizations just are not good enough anymore. You have to innovate, you have to think differently, you have to create environments for people to excel, to really shine in order to accommodate this additional demand. Now, of course, I'm running an innovation organization, so from my perspective, my answer to that would be what to do. You need to innovate in many different areas, organization, processes, teams, products, but what does it really mean? And I can only share my personal view on that. Innovation for me, applied in the business, is not something new. That's not enough. We have all of us here, smart people in this room, we have plenty of great ideas every day. But I guess, at least looking at myself, I'm not able to implement all those great ideas changing the world that comes to my mind every day brushing teeth. So innovation for me is something new that adds additional value, in this case, to your business, to your company, to your customers. We also spoke about success. How do we define success? And in my opinion, and my view on that, success is not only having good idea, but as I said, it's about making it happen, about implementing the good idea, which really makes a difference in the end. And those are the two, I would say, rules of thumb that we try to apply as we go with the teams. Large organizations, as we all know, are complex. If you look at IT, we always had this well-structured IT organizations divided into teams that build, teams that operate or run, teams that plan what needs to be built. Those teams typically they don't want or like to talk to each other, they don't care really. The system is built in a way that it's driven by efficiency, scalability, large projects. And to some extent, that's fine. I mean, it was fine so far because it allowed the companies to get the job done. Nowadays, it's not enough. I mentioned those new topics, demands, areas coming towards IT, and completely different expectations from the business, how this demand should be supported, addressed. Nowadays, we need to act quickly, we need to be agile, we need to be driven by the actual business demand, by new ideas. We need to work in short iterations, and this is a completely different organization, completely different team setup and kind of a management idea than we used so far. This is highly unstructured, flat teams that have calculated risk embedded into how they work, which is actually not acceptable if you think about this classical IT organization. And on the other hand, if you think about this, approaching business this way makes it much more understandable for them. They have a business requirement or opportunity or a problem they want to solve. If they go out to an external company, no one will tell them, okay, we can help you, but then you have to sort out something else. Or fix the scope first and we'll deliver it for you. External companies working with large enterprises are flexible. Now, this is also something that is a very interesting learning, how to apply this to organizations, to management within those large organizations. We need teams, we need an approach, we need people that are being driven by business value instead of scalability, that are driven by speed of delivery, that can make things happen even if they don't know on day one what that actually is. They can explore different paths. They can, as I said, take calculated risk. They can fail, and failure is a good option as well, if they fail quickly, to get to a result which actually makes the business go in front of their competition as a result. This concept was introduced a few years ago, and for example, Gartner refers to this as two-speed IT or multimodal approach. So we have this agile organization in parallel with classical structured organization. They complement each other, and then when something is being delivered by the agile organization, it's handed over to the classical IT. And when I was brought on board, this was one of my main tasks, to try to establish this model in ABB. But as we progressed, it turned out that it's not that obvious. It's not a copy-paste situation. I think every company is different, but it's not that black and white, two organizations do something, hand over, forget it. It doesn't work like this. I think what really makes sense is to establish this mindset of agility, of business focus, of ownership and responsibility of what people do, to create an environment in which they can really make a difference and they feel that. And to treat this as a starting point for the rest of the organization to learn, to transform. It's not yet another business transformation project supported by management consulting companies. So, sorry to all people from management consulting companies here, but it's not how it works. I really like this concept. It's the concept of looking at desire lines in city planning or architecture is something that was quite heavily discussed, but it applies to many different areas as well. If you think about this design from a user perspective, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, there's this concrete roundabouts, and you want to get from point A to point B. Doesn't really look smart to do it this way. If you're a single user, a single person, a customer, you would typically take a shortcut. That's your perspective. Now, it all works for a single person when the weather is fine. But if you're a company, you have to consider scale. You have to consider the entire population of users. And then it turns out, if it's not about a single user, but it's about 1,000 users a minute during a thunderstorm, then maybe, you know, having this extra 5 meters around makes sense. It's not an optimal solution, but at least it works. Now, going back to this concept of two speeds of two modes of organizations, agile organization and highly structured organization, I don't really strongly believe in that anymore. I think there still needs to be, I mean, you can try to do a huge transformation of the classical organization for years and probably fail at the end. But I think it makes much more sense to establish this agile organization, to find people with the right mindset, but not keep them separate from the rest of the highly structured teams. The aim of those guys and girls is to spot those desire lines and make sure that their colleagues in the rest of the organization that work as they used to work 10 years or 20 years ago pave this path, and they will maintain it, and to make sure that the next time they will look around for those desire lines and do it themselves, instead of just waiting for someone to come and kind of show them that there are other solutions kind of out of the box. Now, what I wanted to summarize this part about where we are currently is to show you a short video. It's just 1 minute of your time, but I think that it very well summarizes, I mean, this kind of visual aid and visual identity around the concept is a very good way to communicate to the organization, within the organization, outside the organization, to get people excited to share the ideas. So bear with me for a minute, and then also I'll come back to why I'm showing this, talking more about the findings. What have we found out on the way? And finally, going back to the point, what's the approach? What have we found out during those 3 years? Starting with 3 people, myself and 2 students, 2 interns, to an organization, global organization that is over 50 people currently, plus external teams working on very different technology topics, supporting business, applying this technology to real-life business issues, problems, but also opportunities. And I think I've tried to summarize it in a few points that I hope you'll find interesting. First of all, there needs to be some level of flexibility in what you do. If you're running an organization and your organization is called, whatever it's called, let's call it innovation, but your organization is about having a group of people that you actually lend or you put in projects to do things. And so you're not managing a team, really. You're not delivering business value. You're a body leasing organization. If you want to do something meaningful, make a difference, those people have to work together. They have to feel that they are working together as a team. They have to feel empowered to do things that are not only required from the company, but also they are empowered to look for opportunities, try out different things, reach out to the business, look for customers, try to convince people to follow their ideas, concepts, initiatives. And you have to have some basic flexibility, basic funding to support this. And really, I'm saying basic. If you have, to start, if you have money to have 2 good people, even interns, for half a year, you can pay for their work and just explore different topics except for delivering. That's good enough to start. If you come up with something really interesting, meaningful, people will follow you. People will throw money at you. Money is not a problem anymore. But there needs to be some initial flexibility. Also, of course, heavy processes. I mean, we know how it works, but cut corners whenever you can. That's my advice. You have to follow some of those. Maybe you don't have to follow all if it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's better to try and you know than not try and be sorry and be in the same place. Flexible staffing. If you try different things, you have to ensure that you have the core team, people that are your ambassadors, but also you have a way to scale. If your ideas are successful, you can tell to your partner in the business that, okay, it's working great, we've delivered in a week with no budget at all, but then come back in half a year. It doesn't work like that. You have to be ready to scale immediately. And typically you would use some external resources that you trust and that they can follow your way, your mindset, your way of working. We also have this model of rotating stuff, which works very well. So for new incubation topics, we also do internal recruitments to get people from the classical IT organization into innovation. But the deal is you get there for 1 year only, then you have 100%, you're 100% certain that you'll go back to your initial team, initial project. But what you learn here is you're kind of an ambassador for this kind of mindset. This works very well. And people often ask me, do they want to come back to their teams? And surprisingly, yes, they do. They are really proud of the change they can introduce, things they can share, things they can improve with absolutely minimal effort, just by changing the mindset, having the focus in different places. Variety of skills. You need to cover, if you want to do something meaningful, you can't cover part of it. You need to cover it end to end. So in the team, we have people doing user experience, testing, development, business engagement, all spectrum of skills, and we force people to take roles and responsibilities that are outside of their core competency. Also, what is very important, finding people, recruiting people is not about this technical skills anymore. I really believe, and I have plenty of examples to back it up, 80% of the success is mindset. Half a year ago, we hired a person that came from administration team that could do repetitive, everyday activities so well that it was obvious that she's the right person to work with us, and with absolutely no technical skills, having graduated from tourism, I think, recently. She's a project manager or product owner currently, very successful, super successful, talking to the business, getting people excited. Of course, there's not a lot of this technical in-depth knowledge behind, but you can get it from elsewhere. It's not the core skill nowadays. Be flexible, grow as you go, be pragmatic, first of all. Do things that work, not just do things because you have to do things. And finally, share the success. I think, from my perspective, looking back, this is the most important finding. It's not about delivering a successful project. It's about delivering a successful project, getting people excited, sharing this, and have your internal customers sharing this success as their success. And that's where you get a network of people that actually make a difference. More and more of them that see you can work in a completely different way. And the video that I've presented, just to conclude my speech here, is an example. We have an in-house graphical team that is, after every PO, proof of concept, prototype, project, is preparing this very short interview with our stakeholders, or this kind of animation, or a short 30 seconds video that we share all over the company. And believe me, it works much better than any sort of newsletter, document, presentation. I don't read newsletters anymore. I don't have time for this. But people are super excited to see something different. Someone sharing their own experience about a prototype. This really gets people engaged, interested, and this builds a completely different approach to what we do. Just as a concluding remark, and a very nice thing that I've noticed lately, for 3 years we've built teams of over 50 people. Throughout those 3 years, we had 0 attrition, no one left. Which means that it's a very good indication that people feel empowered, they feel happy, they feel what they do is meaningful, and I think that's the most important thing as for a manager to create this sort of job environment. Thank you.